Blog Talk Radio.
Hi everyone, this is Marty McDermott, the president of Franchise Interviews, and I can't start today's show without talking about the ISO 10002. You know, some people just love to complain, but companies have a responsibility to care. The International Organization for Standardization, ISO, has revised ISO 10002, the standard for complaint handling. This document enables organizations to foster a customer-focused environment open to feedback, heightening their customer satisfaction. You can get the ISO 10002 standard from the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, the U.S. member body of ISO. Visit ANSI.org/complain to learn more. That's ANSI.org/complain to learn more.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. Welcome to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews.
Hi everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 14 years now, we've been asking the entrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and we have a great show today. Well, we're meeting with Jeff McClain, the founder of Patriot Pipeline Inc. And Patriot Pipeline specializes in underground utilities from mid to large-scale commercial projects, as well as residential tract projects. I'm going to talk to Jeff about that in just a moment on Franchise Interviews. So stick around because we have a great show.
Franchise Teacher.
Would you like to know how to franchise your concept or grow your franchise business?
Meet the experts at Franchise Teacher.
The goal of Franchise Teacher is to teach, coach, consult, and advise. The team of experts at Franchise Teacher will evaluate your business model and present you with a winning business strategy.
Franchise Teacher will help you decide whether or not your concept works and if it's franchisable. Franchise Teacher is proud to have over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors.
Franchise Teacher are developers of over a dozen franchise systems, which include brick and mortar as well as home-based concepts of nearly 3,000 combined franchise locations.
Whether you need to add more units or get more customers, Franchise Teacher can help. We will teach.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn our proven system.
Coach.
Franchise Teacher will help you provide a game plan to succeed.
Consult.
Franchise Teacher will make sure you stay on track.
And advise.
Franchise Teacher will help you learn from our over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors. Take advantage of our free, no-obligation phone consultation. Simply go to franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032. That's
franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032.
Hi, this is Connie McDermott, Administrative Assistant for Franchise Interviews, LLC, and you're listening to Franchise Interviews.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 14 years now, we've been asking the Frantrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and as we were saying earlier, we have a great show today. We're meeting with Jeff McClain, the founder of Patriot Pipeline Inc. And Patriot Pipeline specializes in the underground utilities from mid to large-scale commercial projects, as well as residential tract projects. Hi Jeff, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Hey Marty, I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm great today, Jeff. It's great to have you on this show. I thought, had the pleasure of speaking with you before, Jeff, and I mentioned to you, we started this show 14 years ago, and the reason I started this show was because I felt that, every entrepreneur has a story, and your story I found fascinating, but what makes you interesting is we kind of have to kind of go back to the beginning, like maybe like when you were a young child. Did you want to, talk about, your story and how you became an entrepreneur?
Sure. It's not the most exciting story probably for most people, but it's definitely not come from very humble beginnings, I should say.
Yeah.
Definitely used to coming up with very little to nothing, and kind of just accepting or watching my family and, siblings and cousins and friends and just the people that I surrounded myself with, everyone had just kind of accepted, that this was our lot in life.
Right.
And, very humble beginnings, generation after generation after generation. Through all their lives and everything. And
right.
Though there's certainly nothing, I don't want to say wrong with that.
Right.
But it just wasn't for me. It just wasn't for me. And having SpaghettiOs for Thanksgiving dinner was not the future I wanted for my children and my family.
Right.
And for some reason it just jumped out at me all the time that there had to be something more. And going through school and all that, it was never really my thing. I did okay in school, but I was bored. I wasn't really kind of learning what I felt I needed for myself and for my future.
Yeah.
And so college was never really an option for me. For a multitude of reasons. One, I wasn't interested, and two, there was never going to be any money for that.
Right.
So I just accepted at a very young age that I was going to be working. And that's okay. So I was always hustling. I was always trying to find little side things and anything I could do to make sure I had money. Because, when you feel like you may not have anything tomorrow, it can do one of two things. It can debilitate you and let you accept that, or it can drive you to never feel like that again. To never feel like that again, and that's obviously the direction that I took.
Sure.
And I was talking to my mom recently about this, and I told her when so many people, I get so frustrated actually with people that I know that have similar stories than me, and they don't really understand what's out there. And what I told her is, if you grow up in a fishbowl and you want to better your life, so many people just dream of a little bit bigger fishbowl.
Right.
And that's so limiting, and not realizing that there's an ocean out there of opportunity. And for some reason, I just was never going to accept that bigger fishbowl, and it just drove me from a very young age to work. At the time, it was just work. Get a job, get another job, multiple jobs. Work all days and work on stuff all night if that's what it took to advance my career at that time.
Right.
Because again, just never wanted to go without.
Yeah.
But I never really stood in one place very long in that sense, because I was always looking to grow and evolve into a better version of myself. And so again, that's why even in careers, jobs, things like that I did as a young man, if I wasn't moving up within a couple of months, I was on to the next. And
that's interesting.
And I'm just very ambitious in that sense. I just have a drive that I can't turn off. And it's obviously been a blessing for me that I've been gifted with that, in my opinion. That I want more, and I want to be able to provide more for my family and people that I surround myself with. So that's kind of what led me, I guess, to being an entrepreneur is trying to just change the trajectory of my family, of my name, on a simple way of looking at it. I wanted to do something different. I wanted my name to mean something to people.
I'm sure your family is very proud too, Jeff, to see, that you were able to, rise above and used all of this as a motivation and an inspiration too, to, I guess, not even just your family, but people, who've had similar situations like yourself, is you, as you mentioned, you used it as a drive, to move to the next level. It's interesting when you're talking about the fishbowl, because, I've never heard that before, Jeff, but it's so true that I think, it's probably human nature, right? Is that we just say, okay, maybe we want a little bigger fishbowl, and you kind of compared it to the whole ocean. Why not have the whole ocean? And I remember I was speaking to Michael Gerber one time, and he said to me on our podcast, and it always made an impression. He said that most people don't fail because they think too big, but because they think too small, and it kind of reminded me of that, and it really hit me when he said that, because I've worked with a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, and sometimes they don't see the big picture. You know what I mean? They might just see owning one pizzeria or one florist, and why not think about opening or think about a whole chain of pizzerias or a chain of florists or something like that? And that's it's a very powerful. It sounds like it's this mindset that you have in you, but you were able to pick it up at such an early age, which is what I find fascinating, is because a lot of younger people, when they're younger, I'm not sure if they always think that way, and that's why I was so inspired by your story. And then, at some point, I mean, you get into, this industry, which is a very important industry, we'll talk about in a moment, but maybe you could talk about how you got into that too, Jeff, because I thought that was fascinating.
Right. So, like I said, didn't have a lot of things in front of me by way of opportunities, and I just was working whatever jobs I could get, and I was doing well at them. Because again, I took every job as a possible opportunity. Right. But I was young. I was in my early 20s. I think I was 20 actually, and I was getting married. And because that's what you do. Even though I couldn't provide a home or I couldn't provide anything, for my future family, but that's just what you do. Yeah. And an opportunity presented itself. I was up in Los Angeles area where I grew up, and an opportunity presented itself down in San Diego, working on a pipeline job. And never heard of a pipeline. Right. I mean, we've obviously all heard of pipelines, but I'd never certainly seen a pipeline. I didn't understand anything of it. And at the time, I was hanging drywall. I was on a drywall crew. I'll never say that I was a drywall guy by any stretch. I was doing the best I could for a 20-year-old kid, but I took that opportunity as something that was I always kind of tell myself when a door presents itself, you open it and you go through it. Yeah. And it was one of those things, and it was a major move. Moving from the area that I pretty much lived most of my life in Los Angeles, and coming down to where I'm at now, and trying out this new, completely different venture. And to be honest, most people that I knew, my friends, even family members, discouraged me from that. And not out of spite, but out of that fishbowl mentality. Right. You can't do that. Yeah. You're destined to do this. This is your lot in life. What are you doing? Right. And for whatever reason, I decided to, take a leap of faith and do that. And when I went down to that project, I was terrified, literally shaking, because I didn't know anything about anything. But the moment I stepped on that job and saw that operation, I was moved. It was like something came over me, like this is it. This is what I want to do. You knew. And it was instant. And it was very hard work and different than what I had done ever. But there was something about it, all the big equipment and just the scale of everything. I'm not putting a little tiny nail into a wall. I'm putting a giant pipe that you could drive a car through 20 feet underground in the middle of the street. That's just something that so many people would just never understand how to do. Right. And so it just, something clicked in me, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. It's an interesting choice, right, for a career, Jeff, because it was funny. Over the weekend, I believe you put something up on Vimeo. It was kind of like a course, you know what I mean, on pipelines and things like that, and I said, okay, I'm gonna listen to this, and I didn't know anything really about pipelines, I mean, it's something that like you were saying, it's like people just don't think about it, you know what I mean? And I think maybe because we can't see them, but nevertheless, I mean, they're so important to our society, aren't they? I didn't realize. I mean, it's really, I guess it's the most effective way, right, to distribute, particularly like fuels, right, as opposed to, of course you have trucks and you have trains and things like that, but it's much more efficient, isn't it? And then when I was like listening to the course, I was like, wow, this is more complicated than becoming like a brain surgeon, I thought, when I was listening to it. But, I just said it's a fascinating and such an important industry, and I think, you really made a very good choice. And then at some point,
you decided to, I understand, so you're working with this company, and then you decided to, I guess you had this, like, is what they like, entrepreneurial spark. You decided to take the plunge and start your own company, and you called it Patriot Pipeline. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that time and what you were thinking, and how did you know, I guess the question, Jeff, is like, how did you know you were ready? You know, that's always a question, like, for, you know, a lot of people that come on our show or our listeners is, you know, how do you know that you're ready to, you know, buy a franchise or buy a business? You know, maybe you can go back to that time and tell me, like, what you were thinking.
So again, I think a lot of it goes down to mindset, you know, and I've always been one of those people that if I drove by, you know, a beautiful neighborhood and saw these beautiful homes, you know,
right.
I think the natural reaction for most people is, wow, those people must know somebody, must have something, must this, must that.
Right.
I don't do that.
Yeah.
I go, what do they have that I don't have, and why?
Right.
And how do I get that?
How do you get it?
And not how do I take it from them, which unfortunately
exactly.
a lot of people, I think,
right,
today.
Right.
But how do I
true.
also do that? You know, how do I model that? What have they done? And I, talk to people in those situations. And so the same thing applied to business. I would, worked at a number of pipeline companies before I went out on my own in a relatively couple-year period. And most of them, I'm just like, these are just normal guys when I, got to know the owners and the staff. And I'm just like, these are normal guys. And they're, financially light years ahead of me.
Right.
And they do things and afford things that I only dream of. But
right.
They're just like me. They're, for the most part, they're not highly educated. They're not, there were some that I worked for, that
sure.
were. But for the most part, it became so attainable to me at that point.
Yeah.
When I just went, they're just normal guys just like me. So I decided, in my early 20s that I would, work obviously my full-time job and literally spend every single evening buying every single book, anything I could find. There was no internet back then. This isn't,
right.
Maybe there was internet, but I certainly didn't have internet back in the early 2000s.
Right.
So any books that were even remotely close to what we did in civil engineering and all those types of things. And I just studied and kind of just made myself the best version of me.
Right.
And quickly realized it came to me. It was something that was fairly easy to me from the onset. Like I understood
it made sense.
And it all made sense. And I just saw what a lot of these companies were doing and many of them I didn't think ran their businesses very well. They were profitable. They knew what they were doing as far as their product, but just the business just seemed like it could be ran so much better.
Right.
And so I just decided at a very young age, and again, no one, well, maybe a couple people, believed in me at this point. When I'm 20-something years old, and I'm like, I'm going to go and start this business, and it takes, from the outside when you look at it, it takes millions of dollars to start a business like this.
Right.
Some of these pieces of equipment cost, $500,000. So again, most people in that fishbowl think, well, there's no way I'm getting into that fishbowl.
Right.
It's too far a stretch. But I just, again, at a young age, I studied and I did everything I could on the side. I applied for my contractor's license here in the state of California and went down and took the exam, and I passed it the first time.
Wow.
And I think I was 24 years old or so, somewhere around there.
That's incredible.
And everybody that I knew were just kind of like, didn't have a lot of, I don't know if it wasn't faith in me or just faith in just the possibility that it was an option.
Right. Right.
And so I started, basically got my license. I'm still working for a company here locally, and started kind of bidding projects on the side, and then one day I had gone on a camping trip. We come home from a camping trip, and I open my mailbox, and there's a contract in my mailbox.
Wow.
In my name for this, which was the craziest thing ever, for a job that I had bid, and it was like a $200,000 contract.
Wow.
And back then I was probably making $50,000 a year or something like that.
Right.
My income. And
that's incredible.
it was like, I just looked around. I'm like, okay, this is it. It's happening. So I went and spoke to the people I was working for at the time, and left on very good terms. In fact, I spoke to them recently. We're still,
that's great,
friends to some degree. 20 years later, because out of respect, I never went after their clientele or any of that kind of stuff. We just kept it professional. And to be honest, I actually have encouraged them to change some of their business stuff, and they've actually listened to me on a few things.
Wow.
And have improved their business a little bit. And they're one of my main competitors. But
wow.
I have a lot of respect for them. They gave me opportunities and wished me well when I went to start my own endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
And one correction on what you said earlier too. When I first started, it wasn't called Patriot Pipeline. It was a sole proprietor. Okay. It was I had a couple of different entities.
Couple different
names.
What
the heck I was going to do.
Yeah.
As I learned and created the model that I operate under now. So the actual name Patriot Pipeline came to fruition probably 6 or 7 years later. Like about 2010 is when I incorporated that name and that model.
That's great.
Once I did that, everything really started taking off. I certainly made a lot of mistakes in those first 5 or 6 years of business. With a booming economy and then obviously a crash in 2008, it was all kind of the most valuable 5 or 6 years probably of my life as far as learning.
Wow.
That's the way I look at it.
It's an impressive story, Jeff. I know for you it's your life, so maybe it seems less impressive. It's funny. There's this great analogies. They talk about. I'll have to send you the picture, but there's kind of like this. It compares entrepreneurship to like an iceberg, and you only kind of see like what's on top, but you don't see all the work. When an iceberg is all the ice that's underneath. That's all the work that got you to that point, and you did your homework. You put the work into it, and a lot of times I think the average person doesn't see that. With all the work that goes into it. I mean, you really worked for this. And I think that's why it's so impressive to a lot of people, because a lot of people don't do what you did. You took a little bit of a chance. You thought outside the box. And I was thinking, as you're telling the story of getting that first contract, that must have been a wonderful feeling for you, right? I mean, I can't even imagine what your reaction was when you see this $200,000 contract.
Of course, at the same time.
Scared, right? Exactly. You're like, what do I do now, right? It's like, oh my God, it's happening, And that's why, I love listening to the story, because I mean, it really is. It's inspirational. It's motivational to so many people. So when you're talking about Patriot Pipeline, Jeff, I mean, maybe you could talk a little bit about, like some of the services that you provide at the company.
So, our bullet points, if you will, would be, we provide, water lines, sewer lines, storm drains, dry utilities, which are telephone, electric, gas, natural gas, things like that for homes or commercial developments, things like that. We also do a lot of emergency repair work for local municipalities, which is something that developed over the years, and that's kind of the like blah blah. This is what we do, put on the T-shirt and move on.
Sure.
But really, I think what we really do is we provide like a peace of mind to our clients, and that's a big part of the business rather than the product. And what we've developed is as close to a well-oiled machine as I believe you can have, even though we're evolving on a daily basis. But in a large portion of our work, we'll work for a general contractor who's building, let's say, a Home Depot, and so they need a framer and they need a painter and they need all these different trades, and they need a pipeline guy to bring all those utilities from half a mile away at the nearest main facility. So we have to bring all those utilities to that. And a big problem for general contractors, and I know many of them, and I've become friends with a lot of them, is the management, the oversight that they have to provide and or spend on their own subcontractors. Calling them, hey, what time's your crew coming up? How many guys are you going to have? We need this done by this day. We need this, scheduling and pushing and having to, kind of deal with that. And a big part of my model is to not be that guy, to be or not be that company, And I jokingly tell people that we do business with, sign the contract and go babysit the framer.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about us anymore. Right. We'll do our job and we'll be ahead of schedule.
Great.
And 99% of the time, that's exactly what happens. And they love us for it, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people that can put pipe in the ground and do, more or less the same product.
Right.
But the service is the difference. And that's what we pride ourselves on.
It sounds like that's what sets you apart, Jeff. It was kind of like my next question is what sets you apart from, I guess you could say, as you said, your competitors in the industry. You know what I mean? Is they can feel secure and they feel safe. And I'm sure, over the years what happens is, I guess, in your industry, Patriot Pipeline has built a bit of a brand name and also a reputation, and that probably is, I guess you could say, is some of the things that separate you from your competition. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think the main thing is the ability to evolve and change with the times. So many people, so many companies, like I said, that I worked with, even growing up and not growing up in my younger career. Yeah, they were doing things then the same way that their dads did it 20, 30, 40 years before. Right. And they're doing it the same way now. And when they're literally, doing things as simple as, yellow pads and Excel spreadsheets is how they're running multi-million-dollar companies. Right. And there's so much more available in this age that we live in. There's so much more technology and so much more just better, more cutting-edge ways to do things where you can just be that much more efficient and that much more, I'm really trying to break that cliche of what a construction company is and looks like as well. You tell someone you're in construction, and they envision some guy standing on a street corner whistling at a lady walking by, acting like a fool, yelling at each other and cursing and smoking cigarettes and being and and historically that's fairly accurate. Yeah. But that's not what we do. Right. We are the exact opposite of that. I want to look as professional as a lawyer's office while doing hard work, and our guys come home covered in mud some days, and they're shoveling their butts off all day on certain days, and they're hardworking men, but there's just a different level of character and class that I expect from my people. Right. From your team. And I believe that gives so much comfort to our clients. Yeah. That they know, like I said, that they don't have to worry about us. That that we're doing the right thing, and like you said, the brand. All of our people we wear uniforms. Our trucks are meticulous. Our equipment is meticulous. You can walk on a job site with 100 people on there, and in 1 second know who Patriot Pipeline is and who we're not. Some of the other trades. Right. Exactly. Yeah, and that's so important. What's been a tough question, Jeff, but I mean, what's been one of the most interesting things that's happened to you since launching Patriot Pipeline? I'm sure you probably have 100 stories that you could tell me, but does anything stand out over the years, that you kind of say, wow, or, that was interesting? I would say that some of the things, I've put in some major structure things, that are literally the size of a football field buried underneath parking lots that you could put a housing development underneath. Yeah. We dug this thing out with our equipment and built these crazy engineered, subsurface structures and things. Right. Just really beautiful to look at. And, we certainly have pictures of those types of things all over our website and stuff like that. Yeah. But I think just from something that I stand back and go, that's cool. We've, due to our, working in our area and the reputation and name that we've developed, we've become a major on-call response company for a lot of the municipalities in our area. So when you're watching on the news and there's some crazy sinkhole in the middle of a main intersection and there's a car upside down inside of it, we're the guys that go fix that. Wow. And oftentimes that's exactly what we fix. We'll get calls in the middle of the night, and we have an entire system set up to respond to that. Right. And we'll go out there in the middle of the night, sometimes in the pouring rain if it's necessary, whatever. And help our local city or our water department or other agencies, deal with a major emergency like that. And it's fun. I don't spend a ton of time in the field myself anymore because I've had to change hats, which was something that was difficult for me, to be completely honest. But when those happen, I typically just throw my boots on and go get involved, because they're very high profile and they're very important, and I really enjoy doing them, and those are things I look back on and go, wow, because we'll put multiple crews on it. We'll work sometimes 60 hours straight. Wow. One crew rotating, next crew, and we'll get there and there'll be a 20 or 30 foot deep hole in the middle of a main intersection, and traffic is a mess, and by the time we leave, it's repaired, filled back up, streets paved, stripes are back on the road, and things are back to normal, and people have no idea what went into that. And that kind of stuff is I'm really proud of those. Those things are real kind of fun things for us.
It's like you said, it's important what you're doing, Jeff, and I'm sure like every day for you has probably been a little bit different, because the jobs are a little bit different, I mean, you've been doing this such a long time now, and I think, that's what makes your industry interesting as well. So I think that's fantastic. We're speaking with Jeff McClain, and Jeff is the founder of Patriot Pipeline Inc. And Patriot Pipeline specializes in underground utilities from mid to large scale commercial projects, as well as residential tract projects. And because you got involved in this industry at such a young age, Jeff, I'm sure you've seen. You mentioned earlier a lot of changes, and what makes you interesting, I think, is that you're open to change. How does technology play a role in your business today? It seems like you're very open to technology.
It's funny because I'm in no way a techie. I'm much more comfortable with a shovel in my hand than a computer keyboard. Right. That's just who I am. Yeah. But I recognize the importance of technology, and it's from little things. We were one of the first companies to use. All of our field crews have tablets with them, and in the field. Yeah. And that's why their time is calculated, production rates, all those types of things are managed on a tablet. Where we were one of the first people that I'm aware of, or first companies, I should say, that were even willing to try that, because again, everybody has such a small mindset of, I'm not going to spend $1,000 on a tablet times 10 crews. That's $10,000. Right. Okay. Exactly. But when you set up your software to have geofencing, and when your crew clocks in and clocks out, they can't make mistakes on their paper time cards and cost you twice as much money. So people don't realize how much you save just on simple things like that. Right. But even more than that, for instance, our estimating software. Again, I mentioned earlier, there are companies still to this day that have been doing business for 40 plus years that still, roll out a set of plans on their desk and colored highlighters and yellow pads and Excel spreadsheets, and they bid projects like that. And I think a lot of companies are getting away from that, of course. Yeah. But we were one of the early ones in developing. We've kind of developed our own estimating software that allows our estimators to literally bid twice as many projects per person as you could doing it the old way. We're literally doubling the amount of production that we're able to get out of our estimating department. And it's very simple, and it's simplified that. Again, in the old days, the guy sitting there with the highlighters and the yellow pad needed to have 20 years of experience to know exactly what he was doing and have done it all, and in order to be an effective estimator. Where I'm hiring young people straight out of college with a little bit of knowledge, and within a period of a few months, they're bidding multi-million-dollar projects. That's because the software is built in a way where, as long as you have a general understanding of computers and basic math skills, you can bid jobs effectively. Right. Exactly. And on top of that software communicates with the accounting department and the field department and the project management. It's all a moving, growing machine that continually gets better, and it's really been a huge thing. And again, 10 years ago or so, when I got into that, peers that I have in the industry it's never going to work. It's never going to work for our industry. Sure, it might work if you're a carpenter or a concrete guy or whatever, but for our industry, it's to this or it's to that. It's not going to work. And it wasn't without challenges, of course. Sure. But we put our heads down and plugged away, and I've hired some really great people that have helped take my vision and make it a reality. And it's a beautiful thing to see, to be honest.
Oh, of course. And your industry too is interesting, Jeff. In thinking about it, I mean, as you said, pipelines of course burst, and there's a lot of there's always emergency situations. There's a lot of new construction. I guess it's safe to say, I mean, you're part of a big industry. I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know if there's even numbers out there. But I guess it's safe to say that you're part of a big industry, and it would imagine with construction and emergency situations, there's always that growth too, isn't there?
Yeah, it's one of those industries that you don't have to be super educated. You don't have to be. You don't have to spend an eternal time in college to make a decent living. Mm-hmm. And I'm real proud of that. Most of my employees, most of them are not highly educated people, but most of them do very well financially. They own homes. They have a good life. And I think construction in general is one of the few kind of trades or I guess markets that you could get into, and if you're willing to work hard and be smart, you can actually make a good living. I actually did some research recently, and per the AGC, which is the Associated General Contractors, it's kind of an organization in construction. It says that there's 7 million people working in construction right now, and it's about a $1.5 trillion industry per year. Wow. So it's and it's a major part of the U.S. economy. Yeah, it really is.
Wow, I didn't even realize it was that big.
Proud to be a part of. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, that's incredible. What are some areas or other areas, you mentioned some of them, Jeff, of importance for your customers when, again, looking at someone in your industry? I guess, as you said earlier, is trust is, of course, would be, important, and your reputation. Is anything else that I kind of missed?
In the beginning, if it's a new client, someone that we haven't really worked for before, and we're trying to kind of, build that relationship with them, unfortunately, just like anybody else, if you want to get your house painted, right? Most people, what the most important thing they're going to look at is price. Yep, and that's often a mistake.
Of course,
throughout the years, I do the same thing. If I'm hiring subcontractors of myself, I don't always go for the low guy, because there's usually a reason there. Not always,
of course,
but in the beginning, I think But again, our clients, they also have to win the contract from their client.
Right.
So, we can't expect them to pay more for what appears to be the same product. So, we're very competitive when it comes to price, but we give them a lot more for their money. Mm-hmm. I think the efficiencies that we've created through our automating of things and electronics and technology that we use has made us a lot more efficient in a lot of ways in order to save some man hours and ultimately some cost. Right. But we don't give them the same product. We can put the pipe in the ground, like I mentioned earlier, but the product that they get is much better. So again, in the beginning, price is always important, and of course it always is for everybody. Right. But as we start building relationships, and many of our clients are repeat, almost 100% of our projects end up being repeat customers. It's very rarely do we have an unhappy customer. I mean, almost never, to be honest. Yeah. But the more that we do for them, the less concerned about price they are, because they get the value of what we're providing for them. Right. And, that obviously gives us the ability to be that much more profitable. But at the same time, it allows us to deliver what we feel that our clients deserve.
Speaking with Jeff McClain, and Jeff is the founder of Patriot Pipeline Inc., and Patriot Pipeline specializes in underground utilities from mid to large-scale commercial projects, as well as residential tract projects. And maybe we could kind of think of go back, so we can think of the future, Jeff. When you're thinking about Patriot Pipeline, because you're in speaking with you, kind of getting to know you, I see you as a visionary. So what is your vision for Patriot Pipeline? Where do you see the organization, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, or even if it was 10 years down the road?
So something that, I've always wanted to grow, and I've always wanted to improve. Yeah. And, about a year ago, I was at a conference, and kind of hit me that, instead of growing my business up, meaning adding tons and tons more employees at my local level, I would much rather grow my business out. And what I've noticed is that the competitors that I deal with here in my local area that have more people, if you will, seems to kind of water down the quality. At some point, it becomes something that is not manageable for the operation or the what they have in place. The system they have in place isn't built enough to hold and to manage that many people. So they end up with tons of problems and tons of, just poor workmanship, and their quality goes down, and their name suffers. Even if they're good people at the core, it just suffers. Yeah. So, I never wanted to be that. We're not small by any stretch. Sure. But I never wanted to be the discount stop, to get so much more people without the quality. And, exactly. And on top of that, I always wanted to give opportunities for the people that have been a part of my operation to help me become this, as well as other people. I know the many years that it took me and all the mistakes that I've made, starting my business, and set me back years and years and years to where, I could have been in a much different, even better place at this point in my life. But I wouldn't change it because the knowledge I have is priceless. But, I really feel like the only way that I'm going to be satisfied is if I can help other people do what I've done and do it even better. Right. And in other locations. And that, and that's why we're going to be franchising the company. And, and having there's so many opportunities all over the country, and I believe that there are quality people that would share, in my vision, that just need the recipe and the coaching, and the guidance, and that's something that I look forward to and keeps me up at night in a good way. And I'm really looking forward to building a team of owners that that we can all enjoy, what this industry has to offer. Yeah. And you've been doing it such a long time now, Jeff. It's like, as you said, the beauty of franchising is that someone doesn't have to make some of those mistakes that you made earlier because you didn't know. You were just going through the process, you know what I mean? So you learned about all of those things, at an early age. And so someone who becomes part of your system or uses your process and brand name, they don't have to duplicate those mistakes, and they could also duplicate your successes and your processes and things of that nature, and I think that's so important, not to mention your industry is interesting as well. It's not like, I always say, Jeff, hopefully no pizza franchises are interesting, but if I never have to interview another pizza franchise in my life, I'll be happy, because there's so many of them, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's enough already, but in your industry, no, it's not like that, you know what I mean? I think it's still, it's untapped, particularly with a franchise model, and I think that's what's so exciting. And I get that impression from you too, is that, franchising excites you. You know what I mean? Is because, as you said, I think your joy is going to be sharing your knowledge and, to other aspiring entrepreneurs, as you can pass that knowledge on to somebody else and watch them grow or their business grow, and do well financially. And you're really changing somebody's life, aren't you, by doing that? Absolutely. And, what better legacy for me than that? And that's, if there's any selfish part of this whole venture that I'm doing, that's what it is. It's not about money for me. It's not about anything. It's about my own legacy and being able to change people's lives. Anybody that wants to help themselves, I'm real big on that. If someone's willing to help themselves and willing to humble themselves and put in the work, in a proper direction, not just slaving away for nothing, I will applaud them, and I'll be right there next to them, helping them along. And I really, really, really look forward to those opportunities. It sounds like that's what you'll be looking for too, Jeff. I guess when you're, in the future, when you're meeting with aspiring entrepreneurs, people who, perhaps are interested in becoming a franchisee one day to Patriot Pipeline, is that you want to see that spark too, right? I mean, that curiosity, the openness, willing to grow, and hungry, for success. Right. I mean, I imagine that those are the traits you'll be looking for in your new franchisees. Of course. I mean, it's almost impossible to push a rope. know? And it's a phrase I use all the time.
Yeah.
And if you want it more than someone wants it for themselves, they're not the right person, or it's not the right time.
Right.
But if I'm having to pull the reins and say, whoa, slow it down, because you got to do this first, you got to do that first, those are the guys you want, in my opinion. Those are the guys I would want to do business with. Those are the people I'd want to be involved with, because I don't want to try to motivate people.
Right.
For their own success. I want to guide them and help them direct their energy in the right way so they can be successful. But I'm not a personal trainer. I'm not calling them in the morning and telling them to hit the treadmill.
I see what you're saying.
That's not what I'm looking for.
Great.
If they want it, I want to help them get it.
Right.
And
I got you.
And again, that excites me to my soul.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's very powerful, Jeff. What advice, Jeff, would you give to our listeners in their quest to buy a franchise? Out there right now, I think they say there's something like in the United States, there's over 3,000 different systems. And in doing this show such a long time now, the one thing I've learned is that a lot of people that are interested in buying a franchise, they're confused, particularly in the beginning, because there's so much to choose from. And I think it becomes a little bit overwhelming for a lot of people. They're like, this is too much information. I don't know where to begin, how to get started. I mean, from everything you've learned up to this point, I guess what I'm looking for is, what advice would you give to our listeners in their quest to buy a franchise? Find your niche.
Yeah. Like you said, I also you did. I spent my whole teenage years working in pizza parlors, and I would not be interested in running a pizza franchise. Again, no disrespect to those businesses.
Right, sure, of course.
That's not my niche.
Right.
And, that's an easy thing to say, but without opening 100 doors, I didn't even know that this niche existed.
Yeah, and that's true.
I guess that would be the biggest thing, is to be open to opportunities and be open to things that present themselves that may not even look like opportunities.
Right.
Create opportunities out of situations.
Sure.
And you just never know what's going to pop up in front of you.
Exactly.
And I believe if you put that work in and you continually open those doors and you have an open mind, I believe frankly the Lord will put something in front of you that's what you were destined to do.
Exactly. I guess it's keeping your eyes open too, Jeff, right? I mean, I think a lot of times people miss opportunities, don't they? Sometimes it's right in front of our faces and we don't see it, and it seems like, in listening to you, studying your backgrounds, is you always seem to have your eyes and ears open for, what's next,
right.
And
I've heard it said a million different ways.
Yeah.
But, the biggest reason people don't succeed is their overwhelming fear of failure.
Yep. Yeah.
And
exactly.
If you can overcome that and accept that failure is part of life, failure is part of success.
Yeah.
Then your world's above others.
I would totally agree with that. What's the best way, Jeff, for our listeners to get more information on Patriot Pipeline? Is there any websites you can kind of direct them to, or any numbers that you want them to call? You can plug those.
Sure. Our website is www.patriotpipeline.com.
Okay.
We're updating that as we speak on the franchising side of things, but you could still contact our office to get kind of newer information as we're building this.
Right.
Our office phone number is area code 951-679-8364. They're certainly welcome to call there and ask to speak to me directly as well.
That's fantastic. Well, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed talking to you, Jeff, and I'd like to invite you back maybe in a year or two, as Patriot Pipeline continues to grow, because I've really enjoyed interviewing you today.
Thank you very much. I would appreciate that.
This has been my pleasure, Jeff, and we'll be right back with more franchise interviews. Coming up on segment 2, you're going to hear what every franchipreneur needs to know before buying a franchise. We're going to play a clip from our popular Great Quotes in Franchising podcast right here on Franchise Interviews. Hi everyone, this is Marty McDermott from Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising, where each podcast you get to hear a great quote in franchising. You know, we've been hosting franchise interviews now over 8 years and over 400 shows, and during that time we've had some incredible quotes on our show. Today you're going to get to hear from Chris Simic, who is the founder of FranchiseTeacher.com, and Chris has over 30 years of business and franchise experience as an independent business owner, a franchisee, and a franchisor. And Chris said something very profound that we haven't heard on our show in over 8 years. He mentioned that you have to almost work harder to fail at franchising than to succeed in franchising, and he explains why.
Most people, about 90% I think I've seen, buy a business other than they first looked at.
Wow, that's amazing.
So
it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that's a big number too, isn't it, Chris? You know, that, you know, most people, they go in with these certain expectations and they come out with something different, you know, and I find that fascinating.
I absolutely, it never ceases to astound me, but I think that speaks to the value of franchising as a business model and a business method, because people don't have to be in something just because they know it. And quite candidly, sometimes getting involved in a business that you would rather do, that you were not involved in, allows you the luxury of taking a new career path and to develop something you never would have had the opportunity to had it not been, you know, systematized and prioritized for you. You know, in franchising, it's said that you have to really almost work harder to fail than to succeed, because if you have a good franchise system, if you follow directions, you have to almost purposely not follow them to not do well.
That's true. That's fantastic. We have this great quote in franchising. I think we're going to put that one in there, Chris. I think that's very original, and it's very true. What advice would you give to our listeners? You know, we find that most of them, they're just beginning their search to buy a franchise, Chris, and we find that, you know, most of them just simply, they don't even know where to begin, like you were saying. What advice would you give to them?
I do, when I speak to people looking at franchise, I give them three different pieces of advice. One, make sure you're looking for a business for the right reason. Now, a lot of people have things happen in their life. They lose a job or something happens, and they react and maybe say, well, okay, maybe I'll go buy a business. That may not be the reason to do it versus having the luxurious selectivity that here's my opportunity that was created by some adversity. Second thing is that they have to make sure that they are able to be franchisees, that not everybody is designed to be able to follow the systems, procedures, and the processes it takes to be a successful franchise owner. And then I tell them quite candidly is pick a couple of the industries and the price ranges that may have interest to you, and then kind of pin down from there, either using the resources of a consultant or a broker or a team member, or on their own. Either way, but I think that if they take their time, follow the steps, and do it for the right reasons, they'll be on a much smoother pathway to success in owning their own business.
That's well said. What's in the future then for Franchise Teacher, Chris? I mean, where do you see the company 3 to 5 years down the road?
Well, Marty, we've been extremely fortunate and blessed that the business has been around, you know, through Century Franchise Group for many years, and our new FranchiseTeacher.com has taken off. We're representing right now, 7 plus brands. I think in 5 years, our focus will really be even more fine-tuned as the consumer or the prospective business owner is looking for more and more specific information. Breaking down to teach, coach, consult, and advise, I think will be a way for us to assist people in what they need. You know, people, again, don't know what they don't know, but I think information overload sometimes discourages people too early. They say, this is too much for me to process. If we can break it down into bite-sized pieces, I think more and more people, especially the younger generation, who are looking for the advice and the information they want when they want it, I think is, going to do nothing more than continue. Then our next business venture, which launches at the end of this year, is looking to capture all the different franchise brands around the world and put them into one place. So we're looking forward to a future. And franchising is going nowhere but growing. As you said for a long time too, the number of franchise opportunities, and the world's getting to be a smaller place. I think you're going to find a lot of opportunities coming in and going out of different marketplaces in different countries, accessible to more people.
That's fantastic. What's the best way, Chris, for our listeners to get more information on franchiseteacher.com? Obviously, franchiseteacher.com, but any numbers you'd like them to call or email addresses?
Well, actually, we appreciate www.franchiseteacher.com. And my business partner, Dave, and I offer them the free 1-hour consultation. Fill out the form and take advantage of it.
That's fantastic. I want to thank you again, Chris, for finally coming on the show. I've been following your career for a long time now, and I have just been very impressed with everything that you've done, So when I saw this, I mentioned to you, we don't typically call people to come on the show, but I had to have you specifically on the show. So it was an honor and a privilege to have you on the show today.
Marty, ditto, and again, congratulations on your PhD doctorate. I have read your thesis, and I would recommend it reading if people can get through
that's fantastic.
The information.
I really appreciate that you read it.
Franchise interviews from Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia. You're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.